Very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Cass, let me start with you. You implied that members are confused on some issues, so let me pick up on that. I am one of them that you confused in some of your statements there, particularly when you described, in your words, not mine, but that the manner in which regulations come forth is a hard process, a transparent process. From my perspective, it's neither of those. I've run into businesses that are totally unaware that regulations are being formulated. They just wake up one morning and find out there's more regs in their various industry, whatever it is, and they bypass Congress, and all of a sudden we have one legislative body, and that's not agencies. So what is the regulatory process by which they're created?
The Administrative Procedures Act covers most of the rulemaking process, and what I meant by transparency was, and this is the disadvantage to small businesses, is that there are a lot of points along the way in which businesses can offer their comment. Unfortunately, small businesses can't afford the legions of lawyers and lobbyists that big businesses do to keep track of all that's going on in the regulatory space. But there's, the Administrative Procedures Act and the, a variety of other acts and executive orders, do govern a very systematic process of rulemaking. And in some respects, it's too rigid, but it does exist.
I would like to have more information on that, because I see these regulations in essence become law. Businesses have to abide by them. It's law, and there's penalties if they don't. And these are laws that are not created by Congress, and yet they are happening without the jurisdiction and oversight of Congress. To me, that's very problematic. That's not the way our system is designed to operate. But let's move on from here. Mr. Cruz, let me hit you. In previous attempts from other administrations to retrospectively review regulations, oftentimes that actually resulted in more regulations. What makes this effort different?
You have to have an engaged president, an engaged executive to do it. There were cuts under the Obama administration's retrospective review program, and I think that's important in this debate too, because I heard you mention James Gattuso at the Heritage Foundation. I heard him say that if the Obama administration's retrospective review program was a legal thing to do and an appropriate thing to do, this kind of approach is too. But when President Reagan came in and set up the initial central review process at OIRA, it already pre-existed because of the Paperwork Reduction Act. But that was when there was a focus put on doing cost-benefit analysis of regulations. But the problem is still so many of them are missed, and that's one of the reasons the cost can still go up like you're talking about, because if you're talking about a flow of over 3,500 rules that are going through every year, and then you've got a few hundred that OIRA reviews that are considered significant, then of that, there are some that are major or economically significant. And of those, you end up with just a sliver, a dozen or so, that have cost-benefit analysis at all. And there's a few extras that have cost analysis. So there's a lot that can slip through. And other forms of cost may come in the form of regulatory guidance and things of that sort, because you mentioned small business and business. You've certainly heard from them on regulatory guidance in recent years too. But I think that's one of the reasons. It takes effort, and it takes setting goals. I think if you try to do regulatory reduction commissions, or if you try to put this kind of regulatory review model in statute, something like that, you've still got to put goals in place so that the regulators know that it's time to trim things. And this is not a partisan issue, too. I mean, when the Regulatory Improvement Commission was debated, I remember a report from the Progressive Policy Institute where they said these rules are stacking up. It's like pebbles in a stream. You drop a little pebble in the stream, and that's fine. But over time, it accumulates. And one of the things that we don't ever do is go through and try to say, well, how much of this makes sense anymore? As I said in my testimony, it's not just regulation that gets you health and safety benefits too. You've got to get those from other areas. You've got to have a lot of forces that array to expand health and safety as well as economic efficiency. So it's too easy for rules to slip through is the essence of it.
Okay, just a yes, no really from you, Mr. Coley. The difference, thank you for being involved in the UK and hear what you did. The differences in our government, will it impact the success of this effort here? The differences between the UK and the US?
The UK not having a separation of powers, the primary difference is around Congress, and the primary difference between the UK and the US is the UK requires regulatory impact analysis for acts by Parliament. The US does not require regulatory impact analysis for acts of Parliament, for acts of Congress.
So can this still work here is my question.
It could. That's definitely a limitation in the US model, but it's a difference.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
I thank the gentleman, the chair.